Randy Green here, podcast 6, which brings us to principle 6, because here I'm referring back to the original journey that we are doing through the principles that goes with 9 dimensions of our reality, mirrored into principle the original 12 principles, the original 12 rules of engagement, and the original 12 laws of natural energy utilization. And here you understand the number 12 is of course associated with the true human civilizations compared to the humanoids, but they can go into the 12th dimensional level, just to put it that way. But I don't want to go into that trap right now. I'm trying very hard to avoid these thought forms because they are so distorted and they have been utilized within different groups inside our reality that are associated with a completely different teaching system. And I don't want to align with that using the same terminology. So we're using the language here to disconnect from these thought forms and work with, as far as is possible, the reality as we know of it, science as we know of it, psychology as we know of it, again, merged into the higher levels of it that goes with the original knowledge of who and what we truly are. And that knowledge is so deeply hidden, and there's so much clearing work that needs to be done to get to that level, that it dates so far back into the human existence and so many different layers that it is a very, very complex journey. But principle 6 is all about true partnership. And partnership is not just about our soulmates. That's the distortion as well, or our twin flames, that's another distortion, a 5th dimensional distortion. A soulmate is the 4th dimensional tribal distortion that of the 4th cycle. The 5th dimensional distortion is the twin flames. And when you go into the 6th dimension, where there are no oppositions, there is no original twin of male and female, or male and female consciousness, or human or humanoids, or whatever. It all merges in with the 2 triangles into a blend of either male or female or whatever. And it's not the heroes, gammas, or the sacred marriage of male and female, where men turn to women and women turn into male and all become androgen. Knows nothing to do with that. The 6th dimension, the true partnership, is the part of the journey of both the original humanoids that at that point would be able to leave the solar system as we know of it, hence the quote-unquote Merkaba Syrian B crystalline teachings of the Merkaba as the vessel to get out of this system. In the true human civilizations, the 6th dimension is where we connect to inner earth. So that's where inner earth, outer earth, and the middle domain begins to reconnect to us. So that's a whole other journey, because this is our solar system. And we're working our way through the many layers of our solar system, which has 21 to its fullest degree when we are working with all of the layers of it. So that's the mirroring of the 12 and the 21 that goes into this sacred marriage of the different domains. I'm here using the word marriage, not because it's between male and female and gender and sex and desires and whatnot, but a marriage is technically where different energies are merged together by divine law. So let us just use that as an analogy, as an expression. In the 6th dimension, between the upper and the lower triangle, is where the 3 lower and the 3 higher merges in and becomes a unity. That's the integration of the core self with the human self. Let's put it that way. That's where the heart field opens up and begins to unfold its true content, where we begin to connect to the inner realms, where we begin to work with our core essence and the original holographic energetic teaching system, where we are no longer segregated from the planetary grid, where we begin to work with the planetary grid. It is where our energy system comes in alignment with inner earth. It's where the inner earth technologies begin to amplify our original solar system core configuration. It is where we then align ourselves with the solar core of our solar system. And that is associated with the golden center in the middle of the head and with the heart field. Not until these 2 are configured and realigned, that's another symbolic representation of the 6th dimensional 6-pointed star. It has nothing to do with the Star of David. It has nothing nothing to do with the Jesus lineages. It has nothing to do with the inner Christ. It goes further back than that, which we know from ancient indigenous people that existed long before the Jewish people and Christianity. They had that symbol as well. So with that understanding, we also understand, okay, let us strip the later westernized New Age concepts of this and go as far back to the human civilizations as we can and understand these dynamics that has been represented in different symbols. By you contemplating on the 6-pointed star, will that help you? No, absolutely not. You will just go right into the new thought forms, the distortion fields, and all the things that have been associated with that. But it is an ancient symbol that signifies the outer and the middle domain merging with each other, where the inner domain and the outer domain becomes reunited through the heart field and the golden center in the middle of the head. And with that, the golden center begins to draw information from the core sciences and the core holographic teaching systems of Inner Earth that is part of the subsidiary timeline. And you know this from the energy construction work material. Okay, so the subsidiary timeline are tied to Inner Earth, and it's also tied to the Andromedan technology of the future. And that comes with dimension 6, and that is symbolized with the Trinity structures that are merging together and becomes the 6-pointed star that once it begins, then the largest Trinity structure then becomes between Inner Earth, the outer domains of which we are the anchor point, and the teaching or the holographic teaching system of the Andromedan system, from where we literally become the rod or the anchor or whatever you want to call it of the bridge between our sister galaxy and Inner Earth, and we are the representation in the outer domain, from where we begin working our way into the middle domain with the knowledge and the sciences of Inner Earth and our sister galaxy. And with that, we have that understanding. And with that also goes the solar core energies that are, of course, an amplifier that works with the planet itself in its 9 dimensions, associated with the different layers of Inner Earth and the Andromeda galaxy technology there, which is artificial, is not the original one, to prevent the original Andromeda system from getting dragged into this galaxy that is now in the hands of the falling groups, or it's in its fall process, or however you want to call it. I don't want to talk about that. We are now focusing on where we need to go and not all the things that are no longer working. We can say all the things that are no longer working are then allowing us and pushing us to literally disengage and segregate from this system itself, because we can now say, and with true knowledge, there is no longer any purpose and reason for us to stay here. Everything rise and fall. Everything has its time. Everything changes. We're not supposed to be stuck one place forever just because it fits our comfort zone. That's a human expression, and that's the fear of the unknown. The original sojourners of the universal structures, they were in one place at a time until they had learned what they needed to learn. That means transform whatever energy that needed to be transformed, to build that blueprint, to unfold that blueprint into their architecture of consciousness, and with that develop whatever they needed to develop, and then they moved on. So we're not supposed to stay stuck somewhere for a long period of time. Even the universe itself, as you know from the Souls of Humanity book, there are different cycles. Once the cycle is completed, you move into the next cycle. So everything is impermanent. You're not supposed to stay forever at in one place. So even though our human emotional field with sadness, which is of course a lot of energetic parasites that tells you, stay here, I want you to feed me, and you're afraid of the unknown because all you know is me. You know me, I know how I make you feel. I make you give you desires and nice and joy and whatever. Stay here. Then you can just look at that parasite and say, okay, I hear you, but I don't align with you. So off you go, and then dissolve, give it some golden light, and whatever's left of our original genetics from wherever it came from, or whatever's left and remnant of some humanoid species that's no longer able to have its own organic vessel and then been merged into ours to keep us stuck in the distortion cycles. Let it go through the blue-white gate and see it dissolve and go back to wherever it came from, where it can be reseeded. And with that, release it, and it's no longer of our business. It doesn't belong in us. It never did, and it shouldn't. And that's another level of authority, to know what's yours and what's not yours. So that's correct partnership that we're here dealing with, because correct partnership expands from partnership with the sun, partnership with the sister system in Andromeda, partnership with inner earth, partnership with what actually belongs to your body and what doesn't belong to your body. Your body is your partnership. That's the first important partnership you have, and not the male-female merging in the heroes gamos. Not at all. That's an old Greek idea, and it actually comes from the Middle Ages as part of the alchemy Middle Age societies that were playing around with these kind of things to, anyways, I'm just leaving it there because it's so distorted and it's disgusting in all of its core essences. So you're not having me talking about alchemy either, because the whole ideas were based upon greed and desire and sexual perversion. So I'm not going into that one. So let's just strip it of that too, and then see, okay, what is the first partnership that we actually have that is part of the inner authority? As males, you have, and I know Carl Gustav Jung talks about males who have the female counterpart in them as the anima, and the female body has the counterpart as the animus. And that's because Carl Gustav Jung also looked into alchemy. So let us forgive him. He also looked into the shadow that came from, he looked into some old Christian texts where you have Irenaeus that talks about the shadow as something that is lurking in the background and preventing people from accessing the true Christianity, and onward and so forth. So we just let go of that, and let go of that inner male-female bridge that are supposed to be built, and we are aligning with the female aligns with her inner male and whatever. The inner male-female is the remain of the fields of her father. It's nothing to do with the animus. It's the remaining field of her father. And in the man, the female he's got in him is the remaining field of his mother. And we are to let go of our inner parents. And it's not about honoring your father and your mother. It's about literally understanding what these dynamics are. See them clearly as they are. And see your outer parents clearly as they are. See things as they truly are. And then no longer have the infantile, wounded child that are yearning for mom and dad's love or respect or seeing and acknowledging or whatever it is the issue is, or the pseudo partnership, or the whatever the dynamics are. These are some of the things we will explore in psychotherapy, where we go in and figure out what are our parents to us, what are the patterns that we created, how did we align with our parents? It was not just the parent and the child. It was often meddled with so many other dynamics that made it very complicated, because our grown-ups, our parents, they were just children as well. They were the inner child, the rebellious teenager, and the oblivious parent too, or the grown-up. They were not grown-ups. They were just as much children as we are now. When you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you still see you have these traits. Do you see yourself as a full mature grown-up? Of course not. So our parents weren't either. So let's first see them as these unknowing teenagers that barely had lived through their own maturing processes, and they were just acting out whatever was in them, and they are our parents. So, of course, as children, we were not met, we were not seen, we were not mentored, we were not protected, we did not feel safe, because our parents were these rebellious teenagers that with the wounded inner child that had not gone through extensive psychotherapy and understood who and what they were, and had prevented themselves from transferring all of their unconscious and subconscious wounds and karmic patterns into us and their everyday behavior. And I know this is me as a psychotherapist talking here. And I have actually, of all the clients I had one person who had a brilliant childhood, and I was really contemplating whether or not he was literally just in complete denial. But clairvoyantly, and as we worked through, it was balanced. And that's, of all the clients I had, one. The rest are all of these weird patterns. And of course, whatever comes to me are drawn in alignment with my own childhood patterns. So we're drawn in these clusters. That's part of the distorted version of the fourth cycle. Instead of a healthy tribe that helps each other to progress, we are now being drawn together due to our core wounds, right? That's this reality in a nutshell. And with that, we can work together to really create something positive out of it. But it takes a lot of insight and a lot of inner work and a lot of psychological understanding and a lot of understanding of psychodynamics of transfer and projection and how we're really not seeing each other and triggers and all of these things. So that's a lot of things that have come upon the original tribal community where we were to learn to work as a group. I talked about that in the original or in the progression sciences. So you can go back and listen to that, how it was supposed to be and how it's now been distorted into that people are together in families to expand and deepen and elaborate all core wounds across the board within the family dynamic. And I know it sounds pretty harsh when I say it that way. So all about creating so much distortion as possible so we are kept in the wheel of samsara in the incarnational cycles under the prohibiting technologies. The more distraught, the more pain, the more disorder, the more distortion, the more sure it is that we will not get on the path of liberation. So let us say first and foremost that correct partnership with our own body as males and as females in this type of biology as we have today. And here I'm referring to the biological gender. So the biological gender of males, whatever soul they have, that's part of the path of liberation, which is material I work with later on, where there are distinctive teachings and techniques that goes with the biological male and that goes with the biological female. These two paths of liberation are dissimilar, no matter what soul we have. Whether it's a humanoid soul or a true human soul or a female soul or a male soul or a hybrid soul or whatever kind of insectoid soul or avian soul or whatever we have. So let us just work with that as a principle to begin with. So the female biological vessel is engineered of a field of her father and a field of her mother, including our own karmic imprint. We talked about that in the first podcast. Same with the male, he has portions of his father and he has portions of his mother. So the journey of reconstruction and reconfiguring ourselves and going through to become the transformative energy system is to first understand our parents, see them as they truly are in this life, in the outer representation. Then we work with the inner representation, and that goes with the rebellious teenager as well as the inner child, where we understand all of our projections and transfer and misalignment and not being seen, not being heard, all our core wounds. Once we get to these, we can then disconnect from the energy field that is connected to our emotional mental field from the father, mostly expressed through the mental field as females. Our emotional field is mostly connected to our mother. In the male, the mental field is also mostly associated with the father, and the emotional field is also mostly associated with the female. However, it gets a different expression because in the male, he only has 7 rings in his emotional field. Hence, he is not so emotional to the same degree as the female. And the male mental rings are stronger than the emotional rings. And the female is the opposite. She has got 9 emotional rings, which pushes her into a more holistic connectivity to nature and everything. So she's much more impacted by all sorts of energies of this reality, going into much more deeper layers of this reality of distortion than the male does, which makes her more quote unquote emotional. At the same time, her mental field is weaker, whereas the emotional field is stronger. So you see, this is how it's been engineered that way. And that's why the two paths of liberation, or the path of liberation for the two genders, are different. So once we understand as a female to get rid of the father field, not our animals, but the father field, not our inner male, the father field. get rid of that, dissolve that, let that go, find peace in whatever it is. Then we can work with the mother field of our emotional field that is there, engineering and tailoring in a specific way. Once we get rid of that, then we can begin to work with our own karmic residues and the many past lives and the traumas we have from these past lives. The same go with the male. Of course, before we can even go there, we have to have got rid of the genetic fragments, as I talk about in the book Tarology, as well as the advanced energy work, that are connecting us to the chakra system and the hara quadrant, the chest quadrant, and the head quadrant, that are preventing us from accessing what we could call these processes of healing. And that's what I'm talking about, all of these different levels of interference and prohibiting the technology that is there to preventing us from actually accessing our true core knowledge. So the true partnership is always with the soul or the original core self. And it has no gender, as we technically don't have any gender. But we are now in a biological vessel that does have a gender. And our lower fields are engineered to express that gender in a specific way, unless we have a hybrid soul or something else. Okay, just so we got that one clear. And that's a fact, at least in my worldview. And that partnership that we're here talking about is then letting go of males that are talking about, oh, my inner female. No, that's the mother field that needs to be cleared. And all the projections of the mother towards the son, all the things she has thought about the son, and all the impressions she has given her son, and all of the dysfunctional features there are between mother and son, including all the mental projections from the father and all the dysfunctional features that are there. And the same with the female, or the dysfunctional interference patterns between her and her mother, and all the things that's been going on there, including all of the distortions with her father and onward and so forth, which we're then seeing being replicated endlessly in our different partnerships, our female friends that are either representation of our sister or of our mother, of our grandmother, or whatever it is on the maternal side, which are all in our friends if we're females. As males, the whole father issue is always mirrored in different types of friends and males and co-workers and bosses and what have you. It goes all the way through. We're drawn to this situation that wherever we are, the male persons in our lives represent our father, and the female persons in our life represent either our sisters and mothers, and the males as the fathers and brothers, let's put it that way. So in that way, we have got these artificial, quote unquote, partnerships merged with a lot of false teachings about the hero's gamos and Carl Gustav Jung and his inner and outer female and inner or outer male and whatnot, which is, let's take it all off the table and just see it as energy and imprints and genetic material that needs to be cleansed so we can get into our true solar system humanity configuration that does have traits that we can see as male and females, but it's very blurred, and they definitely do not have any intestines or any genitals or anything like we have in our very, very disgusting piece of technology that we call our physical body. The engineering of that one is a mix of so many different types of genetics that it makes it literally the worst piece of patchwork that I have ever seen. And it's made that way to prevent us from accessing the true holographic energetic template. So it's not just about what we say, activating different levels of the human DNA. No, it's about clearing the human DNA. It's about clearing everything that's spliced into the human DNA of the artificial fourth and the artificial fifth dimension. It's about removing all of the energetic parasites that keeps these artificial dimensions connected to our original holographic template, while these species are using our original holographic energetic template for whatever they need to use it for, so they can continue their existence, keeping us in suspension in these artificial fields so they can get the true fields. So that's the original partnership that we are to go for, and it's genderless. It's consciousness that is expressed in different ways and forms. And as you remember from my early teachings, the original female is the true human, the original male is the humanoids. So let us just take that off the table. So if we are to say, well, what is my true female consciousness? Well, that is the solar civilization. And if there is this kind of where you go with the idea of the male that has this kind of inner female or inner male or whatever, then that's the humanoid genetics. But I don't want to go there because it doesn't align. The insectoids are genderless. The avians are genderless. The reptoids, they do have males and females as we understand of it. The mammals have also these male and females as we understand of it. And these are tied to two different types of consciousness structures that goes with the original split of our universal structure. So on the highest level, so we're here to understand the partnership of dichotomies, of polarities, of oppositions that work with specific energetic dynamics that are to be healed, cleansed, and either dissolved or upgraded to their highest potentials, the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate. And there they will begin to blend with the different dimensions that allows for different holographic teaching systems to unravel itself into our core being as full understanding of how to operate on that dimensional level of our planetary grid. So the original or the first merging we are to do with our core self is the first correct partnership. The next level is the correct partnership in understanding other living being in a respectful manner so that whatever situation we are in with these other people, we will always have an outcome that leads to the highest purity, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate with whomever and whatever we encounter as other life forms. I talked about that in the progression sciences as well. And then that moves into the planetary grid, where whatever we do as part of the planetary grid, as it runs through us as part of a very large trinity between core or inner earth and us as a heart field and brain field, the core level of that and the Andromeda system, we become the trinity holder of that configuration from where we work our way through clearing and healing of our connection points to the original holographic grid of this system, which first begins with the planet, then begins with the solar system itself, and then goes to the galactic level, and then we reconnect to the original dimensional level of the Andromeda system in the 9th dimension. Super important to understand. Okay. With that understanding, we also begin to work on our cellular level. Instead of the electrons, protons, and neutrons, we begin, as we talked a little bit about with the advanced work with nutrition course in the transition sciences, where we first work through the solar system level, but eventually once we have recalibrated our entire energy system to the next levels of the subsidiary timeline, as you know from the subsidiary timeline and energy construction work courses, there are different stages. And this stage where I am right now is beginning to express where we say the electron changes according to the outer domain vibrational level. The proton changes to inner earth vibrational level, and the neutron begins to align with the vibrational rate or the code systems of the Andromeda system, all depending on what level we're working on, because it works in trinities as well. And here we begin to have the Ennead or the 9-pointed star, where that begins to work, infusing the 6-pointed star that goes with the merging of different fields that also, of course, go into the biological level. That ties into some of the understandings of inner earth. And that means at this level, when we begin to vibrate as that trinity, which is the last trinity of the outer domain, the middle domain, that then adds in with the cosmic level of the Andromeda galaxy and the core level of our planet or our system, inner earth, which is aligned with all inner realms of the other planets once that was there. But the one we have here on our inner earth is different than the inner planetary sectors that were as part of the other planets in our solar system. But we will not tie into that. But as I talked about, there are certain dynamics that aligns with the planets and how these planets and whatever's left of that configuration is seen in our enslavement chart, as we could call the astrological chart. So the true partnership goes with inner authority. In a way, we could say that we have been engineered so to such a large degree to be two separated halves in the male and female consciousness potentials, which again is a representation of the alignment or the artificial alignment. Okay, let me explain that a little bit. So we have mother-father fields within our own, and the male has the mother-father fields within himself. What he has not connected to in the right manner in his own representation of the emotional field, which has been distorted to his mother and whatever interdynamics he have had there, he will then now seek to find a female that matches that, either for healing or further distortion, all depending on the karmic residue and whatever's left there. And the female has the father pattern, and she will seek a male that represent that dynamic so she can get it mirrored either for healing or for further distortion. Okay, all depending on the snake in her head. So we could say there are these, and the emotional field there of the female will then be further distorted by the male connectivity of the male mind, which we know females and males communicate differently, and that leads to a lot of distress in pairs, both gender. Both the male and female have difficulty in this. The female often more emotional expression, where she feels that her mind field is being shut down by the male mind, mansplaining everything, and the male goes the other way around and feels he's being castrated and he's not being met emotionally by the female because her emotions are more prominent, and he feels that she is the one that's always there and he just have to bow to her will and her emotions and her whatever, and in that he just flies away in his own mental processes and team up with the guys and just becomes very physical, and then shuts off the emotional body because that's unpleasant and it feels too much and it's overwhelming. He doesn't know what to do with it, and he doesn't speak the emotional language and onward and so forth because of the 7 rings that are configured differently. So there is built in originally from the get-go of the human species that males and females are literally not to be the happy couple, but to be the ones that will breed offspring in a dynamic of oppositions or polarities. And then there are certain points that align, and then there's this little electrochemical trick that makes us fall in love with each other. It is nothing but electrochemical sparking, often instigated by the prohibiting technologies, putting people together so that specific type of hybrids or offspring can be born into reality from where different types of souls can come into being. Very orchestrated, very administered as part of the original colonization construct. Okay, so with that, we also understand that the partnership that we have with our partners, if we are to look at it from that angle, will then become what we call a healing relationship. So with our significant other, no matter what gender we have or whatever affiliation we have or whatever type of love life we have, it doesn't matter. We are drawn to a partner that will represent our core wounds. Very romantic, right? And then the whole process of the correct partnership with another significant other that we are engaged with in love and sexuality then gets very complex because of the biological merging along with the emotional merging, and very rarely with the mental merging. Be it of the same gender, the opposite gender, doesn't matter, because we are often seeing that even though if there are two it's a kind of a homogetical relationship, then with the same gender, then one of the same gender, one of the partners will have a more predominantly female feature, and the other one will have a more predominantly male feature. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 females or 2 males or a male or female that goes together. The dynamics are exactly the same. The quarrels are exactly of the same origin. The misunderstandings are exactly the same. The core wounds are exactly the same. It doesn't matter. What differs is the sexuality performance, and that creates a lot of distortion when we are technically doing it with our own gender, but that's energetic laws that are being distorted for a purpose. But that doesn't mean that there can't be brotherly and sisterly love that can support in our good friends and in relations we have with our own gender that can be super healing and nurturing. But there we often go into a kind of dynamic, not as 2 sisters, but more as a mother and daughter or as a father and brother. So that's a kind of a different transaction that's going on there in the healing of the core wounds or amplifying our distortion, if you like. And I know what I'm saying here probably will, people who are in their own or same-sex relationships, they will probably be a little bit kind of, oh, what are we talking? Why do you say that's such a distortion? Let me here put all of your upheaval to rest. When males and females have sex, it's also creating distortions in both gender. Sex is there to create distortion. Simple as that. Because it connects to the underworld currents, unfortunately. It ties into all the great works of civilizations that have been here that has been tampered with to such a degree that procreation became possible. It's one of the few planets in any galaxy that has procreation as we have it here. And that's a huge distortion, and that keeps us in the incarnational cycles, which is why all teachings have always taught that if you want to go on the path of liberation, you have to follow the 8 precepts, as the Buddhist teachings say, and we might as well use them. And that's part of it. But to fully let go of something, we have to understand what it is, and we have to feel it and experience it and meet it with authority before we can let it go. We have to have partnered up with it and understood it fully before we can let it go. And that's another partnership. So the exploration of our sexuality is part of that. And it must be completed. And all the core wounds that comes with that through this life and past lives. Because there's so much hurting related to sexual encounters or sexual energy exchange between humans in whatever forms, between animals in whatever forms, even within dogs or within different, for instance, dogs. Some females that haven't partnered up with a male dog yet, some of them get raped to death. So partnership is a way that nature has arranged that the females don't get overburdened with all of these productive males, and whomever males are there will get kind of more domesticated by being in a partnership, so it's not running rampant, spreading semen all over the place, just to put it that way. I don't want to go further into that. I'm just saying that there are reasons why when we talk about the reconnectivity to our original core self goes through the exploration and the understanding of what it is, so that we know that we no longer need to explore it. We are no longer drawn to it. It no longer has an affinity with us. It's completed, it's saturated, and we let go of it because it no longer serves any purpose in our journey on this planet. So it's naturally let go of, which you see in many practitioners of mindfulness and many practitioners of the jhanas and the inner realms. They naturally let go of sexuality, because their entire constitution, even though on the biological level, gets so purified that they no longer connect to or draw in these highly distorted energies of what we call fallen grids of our planetary structure. And I know this is a heavy load of information to get there, but just aside from the whole oxytocin and all the things that it gives and the connectivity that it gives in a relationship, and it's part of the original procreation and whatever's going on in relationships, you see a natural decline. The longer pairs are together, the less there is that need. It's a biological imperative. It's part of a program to make us merge together. But then eventually, as we get more and more back into our own energies and we learn to transform these different mother-father figures or fields within ourselves, and the partner does the same thing, then there's less and less need for that connectivity on that very primitive level, which sexual energy is. The esoterics kind of call it it's a kind of a fire that pulls oppositions together so that they can transform and merge and transmute into something else. And once we transmute that, then the sexual desire in itself, sorry about that, will then cease to be predominant. And other features becomes much more important. The ability to clear through and unfold and investigate the emotional field between two that are significant others or just friendships, anyone we hold dear and near, going through these emotional cycles and processes and letting go and aligning, and hopefully see each other more and more as we truly are, and begin to understand our karmic residues and our quote unquote soul journey, and respect each other on a soul level, begin to see each other on a soul level, begin to see the inner human and the journey of who and what we are, and what and how we can together work to the highest purity rate of the biology, the highest standards of the psychology, and the highest progression rate of our true core potentials. And once the relationship changes into that, then it's a healing journey. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's unpleasant. There's still quarrels and roars and journeys and things that are triggered and all of these kind of things. But the whole framework does no longer be about me, myself, and my desires and what I need from you so that I can feel whole. But it goes more into how can we work together here as a couple, as a partnership, as two people together, be it two sisters or two friends or the significant partnership or whatever it is, the significant other in a romantic relationship or whatever it is. It becomes a journey of transforming who and what we are so we can begin our true journey on the path of liberation. That's the extended version of where we're no longer partnering up due to selfish desires and needs and comfort zone and projections and childhood trauma. And then we team up as pairs that are walking on the path of liberation, that are teaming up because we're doing a partnership that we know will not only secure us in this physical reality, whatever that means for different groups, whatever, whether it's sexual or biological or emotional or mental or physical or in work relationships or whatever it is. When we team up with others in whatever version it is, both as pairs, but also extended into a little collective or a community or a cooperation, another C word here, then we are, the coupling goes in and ties us together in an energetic group that aligns with the original dynamics of our solar system. Even our solar system is composed of other 8 planets. So that in itself is a cluster of planets. So this solar system is all about clusters. It's all about learning to work in groups that will then transform and develop different versions of who and whatever we are, create different nodal points that will amplify the planetary grid so it aligns with the solar grid, that aligns with the cosmic grid or the galactic grid. So that's the work that we are doing here. And with that, the planet itself becomes the biological level that the biofield should reconnect with that, with the original 9 dimensions of that. And the emotional field then becomes part of the solar system and should vibrate the 9 dimensions of the different aspects of our solar system. And our mental field then becomes the cosmic expression of the universal cycles and the true cosmic knowledge of what it actually means to be a human that is progressing through different dimensions and different realms and different cycles and ongoing existence of whatever being that we would prefer to call ourselves. So these are another extensions of what we could call where inner authority, where when we know who and what we are, then we can begin to connect correctly with the otherness and reality itself in correct partnerships, in correct otherness, where the self that we have is no longer about me, myself, I and my core wounds and my inner child, my rebellious teenager and my oblivious grown-up, playing out this memory loss and these core wounds and these rebellious tendencies. But we become the cosmic being that understands we're here on a journey and we learn to journey together with the world we are part of, with the otherness that represents itself to us as a mirror of who and what we are and what we need to work with, either as something that is there to prohibit us from growing further or something that is representing a wound we have or a karmic residue. Some of them are people we have met prior and previously in other lifetimes sometimes. Some of it goes so far back to the original pillar projects. Others are just thrown in our field to prevent us from accessing further information and putting us down. And sometimes the ones that will grade us the furthest, they're actually seen first as the ones that's the biggest obstacle, all depending on what we're dealing with, until we have got all of our core wounds up to the surface. And then we can see actually they were there to help pulling it forth, pulling it into to the visible side of our experience. But once that has happened and we have become acquainted on a new level and we recognize the soul journey, and there we can look into the astrological chart of some of these dynamics, then we begin to understand, okay, what are we supposed to do here together? So we don't create more distortion, but actually get to the point of some kind of harmony and balance. And once that is acknowledged and we see what that truly is, then sometimes we have to let go, because then all of the transformational processes, all the transformation material, everything that will lead to a high purity rate, highest standards, and highest progression rate will then be completed. And then there's no further need for being together, so to speak. There is nothing that ties us together. There's no magnetic pull. There's no interference pattern. We can choose to remain together and then work with, okay, how does that work? What can we do here? What kind of environment can we then create? Or if there are other core wounds that are drawing us to other timelines and other circumstances and situations, including where we live, then we will be drawn there as part of our completion cycle. Everything is under the law of impermanence. Everything must change, including what is the correct partnership for us. And with that, I will end this podcast. I strongly recommend for those of you who have not done the progression sciences yet, that you begin that journey, because then most of what I've said here will make so much more sense. So with that said, I will here end podcast 6, and thank you for listening in, where we next time will begin with the next podcast. And here, since we have talked as much as I can about claiming inner authority, then level 3 will now be Embodying Your True Self, podcast 7 to 9. So I have changed the order a little bit, but this feels more in alignment with information that we have now unraveled. So until next podcast, take care.